What's going on, my fellow warriors? Musou Prince here with another Royal Rambling, and I wanted to touch upon the Warriors franchise for this one. Yeah, a guy whose main focus is being on the Warriors series is talking about that very series, go figure. But this particular subject I wanted to talk about is one I feel like every Warriors fan has thought about at least once. What can be made into a Warriors game? And with that question in mind, I'm going to talk about 10 different franchises that I feel deserve the Warriors treatment. Now, this isn't a top 10, so the order I talk about these games in is irrelevant to how much I want these to happen. As said, it's just something that I wanted to geek out about. And I also know that both Blazing Knight and Josh Scorcher did videos on this as well, and considering that my taste in media is very similar to theirs, I apologize if there are a couple repeats on here from their list, but I'll definitely make sure to talk more about those in different details to make it fresh. So without any further distraction, let's begin. Well, we're starting this list off strong with an already popular IP, Marvel. And I can understand why, since Marvel is as huge as it has ever been thanks to the cinematic universe. And since Koei is heavily known for jumping on popular bandwagons, a Marvel Warriors game doesn't sound too improbable, especially since Koei helped in making Ultimate Alliance 3. With the roster comprised mostly of superheroes and supervillains from the Marvel franchise, the movesets pretty much write themselves with the characters using their special powers, like Spider-Man using his web shooters to web up enemies together, Magneto clustering a group of minions using his magnetic abilities, or Wolverine endlessly shredding through hordes of grunts. And speaking of the roster, there's so many characters to choose from spanning over different teams, like the Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's not to say the villains wouldn't get any love either, since there are many to choose from each of the superheroes' rogue galleries. Kingpin, Dormammu, Loki, especially Thanos and his elite forces of the Black Hand. You could fight as and against any of these characters in famous Marvel locations like Asgard, the Dark Realm, Kree warships, and even good old New York City. Now, since Disney usually has a death grip on all of its big IPs, it's going to be pretty difficult to get them to say yes to this. But if they do, it'll be a grand show of characters that are waiting to assemble. I'm going to admit, this one is going to be coming kind of out of left field, because I do want Koei to show some love to their Western audience by making Warriors games based off of Western media. And that's not to say they haven't, because they have with varying results. Now, you'll see some very deserving IPs of Western media later down this list, but you may scratch your head in confusion at this one. We are in the future. Yeah, I know, I'm weird, but think about it. I think Steven Universe would fit strangely well as a Warriors game. Major cast of differentiating characters? Check. Series littered with all manners of fight sequences and major conflicts? Check. Many different kinds of enemies to fight as both bosses and minions? Check. A diverse art style and locale that would make this one of the more beautiful looking Warriors games ever made? Double check. Now, the story could of course span through the entire saga of both Steven Universe and Steven Universe Future, following Steven's adventures, but who's to say we can't also get some interesting new scenarios inspired by different points brought up in the show? Like, we could get some flashback missions where we play as Rose fighting against Homeworld gems, or play as the other Crystal Gems during this time as sort of origin missions that can take on their own story thread. Then or yet, Koei could probably get the stamp of approval or even cooperation of Rebecca Sugar to help write an original story that takes place after Steven Universe Future with all new original villains and enemies to fight against. I'm honestly foaming at the mouth just thinking about it. I know a certain friend of mine would be ecstatic about some form of continuation for this amazing franchise. As I said previously, Koei has tried in the past to appeal to Western audiences by making games that were more focused on famous Western wars like Bladestorm for the 100-Year War and Warriors Legend of Troy for the famous Trojan campaign. If they ever decide to try and do a Western-inspired war game again, maybe this time they should try and bring to life one of the West's most beloved legends of chivalry, King Arthur and his Knights of the Round.
There are still forms of media today that still take pokes at one of the biggest medieval classics, so I think Koei should at least think about making this a project. You already have a set roster to play as King Arthur and his other round table knights, like Lancelot, Percival, Galahad, Gawain, Bors, and hell, maybe even Merlin as well. And from the many legends of King Arthur, there have spawned different kinds of enemies that the Holy Knights had to go up against, like the Saxons, Morgan Le Fay, and the Dark Lord Mordred. And as for the story, why not have it be based around the Holy Grail? With the Holy Grail's power, it would create a perfect conflict for King Arthur and his enemies. And with the Arthurian mythos being heavily dipped in the medieval fantasy aspect, we can get some heavily inspired stages of that genre, from castle sieges to mystic forests. Hell, maybe even the Lady of the Lakes domain could be a possible stage, or even a hub. Bottom line, this kind of Warriors game would not only be a great addition to the archives, but it would also be a great appeal to the Western audience. Since it seems like Koei really has more fun with their native history and tapped into the more demonic and dark aspects of the Shinto mythos with games like Nioh, there's a title that is very similar to Team Ninja's recent action game that would make a good Warriors game as well. Enter in Capcom's Onimusha franchise. Now, it has been a good 2, almost 3 generations of consoles since Onimusha has had a new entry, but with Onimusha Warlords having a remaster for the PS4, there's some hope yet. Now, Onimusha is no stranger to crossing over different game genres, as it actually had a Smash Bros-like spin-off for the PS2 called Onimusha Blade Warriors, where the game takes all of the iconic characters from the first 2 games and places them in an original in-series canon story with, of course, the gameplay aspects of a party game like Smash Bros. Its Warriors game can do the same, and with 2 more games proceeding after Blade Warriors, the Onimusha Warriors would have more to work with. Now, I can only see this game's story doing the usual Warriors crossover shtick, but it's ironically something that Onimusha is familiar with: time distortion. A new enemy is messing with the timeline to reverse what the main characters have done in the previous games, and now heroes throughout the timeline of Onimusha must band together to stop this new threat. With a mixture of swordplay and Japanese magic thrown into the gameplay, Koei would be able to have fun in choosing diverse movesets for the already diverse cast of characters like Samanosuke, Jubei from Oni 2, Kaede, Jacques, Soki, and my sweet Jubei from Dawn of Dreams, and the antagonists and minions just write themselves in, like Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Fortinbras leading an army of Genma to fight the Onimusha. Maybe Koei could even add in some original characters based off history, like Yukimura Sanada or Sasuke Sarutobi. In fact, why not make the person who caused the time distortion in the first place be Lady Cha-Cha, thinking bringing Hideyoshi and Nobunaga back would save her clan during the siege of Osaka. And Koei could even add in little tidbits besides the iconic stages from the franchise, like they could utilize the Soul system in a similar fashion to the original games for leveling up and upgrading equipment. Capcom and Koei would have to be stupid to think that this idea would not work. Oh yes, oh yes, oh hell to the frick yes! I may be a little biased with this one because this was my gateway anime, but I don't freaking care. This series would be amazing as a Warriors game, and you cannot deny that. Imagine playing as the anime's most beloved characters and taking down hordes of demons by using Inuyasha's Backlash Wave, Moroku's Wind Tunnel, or Sango's Hiraikotsu. And having the chance to play as Inuyasha's most iconic villains like Kagura, Bankotsu, and especially Naraku himself would be a treat to the fans. The story could span through the entire series, where not only would you have the official story with playing as Inuyasha and the gang, but you could also have what-if campaigns with playing as characters like Sesshomaru, Koga, Naraku, and maybe even one with Bankotsu and his band of 7. Heck, the love for this franchise has been recently renewed due to a sequel series, so there would definitely be interest for this. And heck, they could probably even make Toa, Setsuna, and Mohura as DLC wait. Maybe I shouldn't be encouraging Koei's usual horrible business antics. When Koei first began these crossovers, their first and obviously more prominent and popular ones have been their anime crossovers, and as I just gushed over Inuyasha being a good idea for a crossover, one could definitely see that most action-based animes can work extremely well in the Warriors franchise. But what about Western animes? Really, these recent years have been extremely kind to RWBY. Yeah, I kind of lost interest in the show since Monty Owen passed away, but Rooster Teeth has done some big brain business moves when it comes to getting RWBY on the video game market. One of the biggest ones was Cross-Tag, but more recently, RWBY got some skin love in the hit MOBA Smite. I kind of made a video on it. So after guest appearances in a fighting game and MOBA, how about they get their own treatment in an action style that perfectly suits the combat-skirted femme fatales? Grim minions, dynamic urban locations, and a colorful cast of characters both figuratively and oh so literally. Koei could definitely create an original story for this game and actually give us a finished game story this time! I'm not bitter, Rooster Teeth! But I digress. I would give anything to hunt down the creatures of Grimm as some of RWBY's characters, and I would happily pay full price for this to be a reality. Alright, time for the Nintendo entry. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, you. This could honestly be one of the more cute warrior games, but still rather fitting. From humble times, Kirby has been a tried-and-true platformer with light combat elements due to the copy ability that Kirby has. However, more recent titles has definitely included more to that action aspect, especially with Kirby's Return to Dreamland and Triple Deluxe. So seeing the little puffball on the plains of Dreamland using his sword ability to cut down endless Waddle Dees doesn't seem so out of place. And what with Kirby having a good amount of games doused with memorable characters, this would be yet another easy but admittedly smaller roster to litter up with the characters like the titular Kirby, DDD, Meta Knight, Bandana Waddle Dee, Prince Fluff, Ribbon, Taranza, and of course Kirby's amazing villains like Nightmare, Marx, Magalore, Queen Sectonia, and the dreaded and powerful Galactonite. As for the gameplay, most of the characters having default weapons would have a simple and single playstyle similar to most other warrior characters you'd see, but since Kirby has his famous copy ability, he would be able to obtain dozens of different playstyles while in mid-battle, allowing most of the replayability and uniqueness of the game's combat to be through Kirby himself. And yeah, the story again would have the usual time/dimension distortion that most Warriors crossovers have, but it would allow us to travel to many different places in Dreamland and some other places like the world of Yarn from Epic Yarn, making this possible idea another wonderful little adventure for our pink hero. Now we're getting into the big league stuff. Yes, if Koei wants to get all the green their money-grubbing hands can carry, they have to make a Star Wars Warriors game. So many characters, so many memorable worlds, so many stormtroopers to endlessly cut down with a lightsaber. Now, first off, the roster. I am probably going to piss a lot of people off, but for this to be a genuine Warriors-like experience, I feel the playable roster should only be comprised of lightsaber users, so unfortunately, no playable Han Solo, Chewbacca, Clone Commanders, or Poe Dameron. I'm sorry, Poe! But even with that horrible decision I made, these aforementioned characters could still be in the game as NPC officers, and really, I'm sure a majority of people would rather play as a lightsaber wielder in this kind of game anyways. And as for the actual playable roster, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Papa Palpatine, High Ground, Child Murderer, and Best Boy 1 and 2. So many characters to use, and also plenty of campaign ideas, but because I made the bad decision of not including blaster characters for the roster, I'm gonna make up for it right here. Much like how the first Gundam Warriors game did, I feel like this Star Wars Warriors should have both an official and original story campaign. The original campaign bringing even more characters from other series like Revan and Bastilla from Knights, Starkiller and Rom Koda from Force Unleashed, Kanan and Ezra from Rebels. The sky's the limit with Star Wars seemingly endless Legends archives. And as for the official story, it could be split up into era-based campaigns for Clone Wars, Galactic Civil War, and First Order, where each one would have the canon campaign playing at the light side, and then a what-if campaign where you play a drastically different outcome to each era by playing as the dark side, and heck, just to make classic Star Wars gamers wet themselves from excitement, make an homage mode to Galactic Assault from Battlefront, and allow you to take any character you want to conquer the galaxy, a la Conquest mode from Dynasty Warriors 7. You're welcome, fellow Battlefront nerds. Much like the Star Wars lore, this game could have dozens upon thousands of hours of content, giving amazing amounts of replayability and a chance for the Force to be strong in you. If Disney will let it. What would happen if you had the content of The Lord of the Rings Conquest, but with a warrior spin? That's right, going from one cinematic phenomena to another, Lord of the Rings is another Western love that should be given the Warriors treatment, and after playing Conquest and the licensed movie games on the PS2 over and over and over again, it only makes my want for this idea to be more of a reality. I wasn't joking when I said that this game should be like Conquest, but more, since the story campaign should have both a good and evil campaign, where you get to choose whether to fight as the Fellowship like Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, and Sam, or the forces of Sauron like Lurtz, Saruman, Grima Wormtongue, Mouth of Sauron, and Gothmog. Heck, maybe even include some new original battles that never took place in the movies. Conquest did that with the Minas Morgul stage, so why not continue with stages like Shelob's Lair with a playable human version of Shelob from the Shadow games, or Cirith Ungol, where the armies of men engage in a three-way fight with the orcs and goblins during their little civil war brawl from Return of the King. Get some researchers on this, they'll definitely come up with more than me. And if they're able to recreate the amazing siege and field battles from the movies, Koei would definitely have the one game to rule them all. Wow, I'm actually really shocked no one has thought of this yet. Go, go, Power Rangers! I mean, seriously, this franchise is practically screaming for the Warriors treatment. I mean, the East was able to get a Warriors-like game for the Kamen Rider series, getting to play as every Kamen Rider. So why not try something with this, especially since the Power Rangers name is still making that sweet green today. Now, granted, there are 6 times more characters in Power Rangers than Kamen Rider, so having a reasonable and sizable roster for a first Power Rangers Warriors would be a bit more difficult than one could imagine. Here's how I would do it. The roster would consist of the full Ranger teams from 6 different seasons, preferably 2 from each, being the Zordon, post-Zordon, Disney, and Nickelodeon eras. And if I would choose what I believe were the most popular ones, it'd be these ones. And that would give us a good healthy roster of 30 Rangers, 36 if you want to count their 6 Rangers. Now, they may end up not being playable, but you'll still be able to take on the most gruesome baddies from these same franchises, like Lord Zed, Goldar, Xandrid, Andromeda, Trakina, Rancic, the list goes on. And just like the idea of having 5 to 6 Rangers from each franchise, there should be 5 baddies at least, including the head baddies from each franchise as well to fight, including their own minions ranging from the Putty Patrol, Stingwingers, and Cyclobots. And just like I said for the Star Wars one, the Power Rangers Warriors could have both an official and original story mode. The official going through the 5 episodes of the Rangers taking on their franchise's monsters, and the original mode of different Rangers teaming up to fight against the monsters who are also teaming up. Overall, a great concept that would make an amazing and mighty game to add to the archives. Well, that's about it for this little royal ramble I made. I hope you guys had as much fun as I had with this. It's just so fun to go over the possibilities and just have the hopes that one day these ideas will be made. If not Koei, hopefully another company can pick up on these and try to take away Koei's Western monopoly on the genre. Seriously, Koei needs a reality gut check for their business practices. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Royal Rambling, and I hope to see you guys in the next project. Later, guys!